did you get the reference to the Rage Against the Machine song in my thumbnail? If you're Gen X or Gen X adjacent, like a younger boomer or older millennial, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I chose that line because I wanted to talk about the lies we were told in the 80s and 90s that some of you may still believe to this day. And it's important to stop believing those lies because they may be hurting your health, your finances, your relationships, and more. By the way, do you like my Breakfast Club t-shirt? I saw it and had to have it. One of the best movies ever. So let's start with the first lie, which began when we were young adults, and that is that you need a college degree. Because if you get this college degree, then you're guaranteed a life of happiness, a fulfilling job, and a job that pays well. The problem is, according to Google, only about half of Gen Xers ended up working in the field that was related to their degree. That means the other half did not get a job related to their degree, and that includes me. It's a long story for another day. But anyway, there goes that idea. If you couldn't even get a job in the field that you got your major in, then what was the point of going to college? Well, here's the point. A lot of people are relying on that money, including universities. So they're technically nonprofits, but they kind of function like businesses in the sense that they need money. And then you have the lenders who are counting on that money, those interest payments that help them make more money. So between the lenders and the universities and some other people out there, they need this lie that a college degree matters to perpetuate. I'm going to share an interesting fact with you that I came across. So in 1990, the student loan debt was at $16.4 billion. By the year 2000, it was at $37.5 billion. So it more than doubled in just that 10-year period. And my point is that on these student loans, people have to pay interest. And whenever somebody's making interest payments, somebody else is profiting from it. See how this works? Lenders made money off of these loans. Meanwhile, the people who borrowed got stuck with these loans for years, sometimes even decades. And for some of you, you're still paying off your loans. Now, it's true you were more likely to get a good job if you had a college degree back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. But it's kind of shifting a bit because there are a lot of young people graduating today who still can't find jobs in their field or even a decent paying job, and they have student loans they have to pay back. And with AI gaining steam, I have to ask if a college degree is even worth it anymore. I'm not so sure. Some of you have teenage children who are about to go to college. I think if I had a teenage child, I would think long and hard about sending them to college because it's a lot of money and a lot of time. And like I said, some of these recent graduates can't even find a job. And then you have the student loan if they had to borrow. And even if they didn't have to borrow and you pay for the college, that's a lot of money. With rising tuition and mass layoffs, I have to again ask if a college degree is even worth it. I mean, some of these degrees are basically worthless. If I had a teenager, I would tell them to just find a job in a field that they think they might want to work in, and if they can get a job, of course, and then work in that field for several years and then go out and start a small business doing that. That way they're getting paid to learn rather than having to pay to learn. Think about it. Why do we have to go to college first in order to get a job? It just doesn't make sense. We should be able to graduate high school and then just go straight into a job. But I think it comes down to the fact that lenders can make a lot of money off of these loans. I think if they weren't profiting from it, then the story might be different. Next is this lie that you need to get a corporate job and grind it out for 40 years. And meanwhile, you need to be loyal and you need to accept a 3% pay raise and you need to accept only 2 lousy weeks of vacation a year, at least here in the States. And you need to give it your all and you need to stay late. And if you did all this, then the company would be loyal to you. Like, right. And I think we all know by now that there is no such thing as a company being loyal to its employees. All you have to do is read another headline about massive layoffs to know that. And I actually mentioned in one of my previous videos about how it does not pay to stay with the same company for decades. You're actually financially better off to job hop every 2 to 3 years. But once again, we're fed this lie because it benefits the people at the top. If you stay late and you're good at your job and you stay there for decades and you accept less pay, it helps them. It doesn't help you so much, but it helps them. Of course, you can still benefit from staying with a company for a long time. Maybe you rise through the ranks, maybe you become its next CEO. So I'm not saying there's never a payoff, but generally speaking, it does not pay to stay. So I would think long and hard about being overly loyal to the same company that could lay you off tomorrow. So if you're always staying late and ignoring your health, your friends, your family, your hobbies, your pets, maybe it's time to pull back a little and get a little more balance in your life. Another lie that's been perpetuated for decades is that you're not really an adult and you're not really financially set if you don't own a home. I mentioned this in one of my other videos, but basically if you have a mortgage, you don't technically own your home outright. Also, I didn't mention this, but your tax payments never go away. But it's important that you believe that you own it because, again, it goes back to borrowing money and paying interest. It benefits corporations. And I mentioned the taxes, and of course there's insurance and maintenance, and you're paying to maintain it on the behalf of the lender. You're the one paying, like I said, taxes and insurance, but you're also paying for the upkeep, the new fence, the new paint, the new roof, and all the stuff that goes with that. You have to buy a lawnmower, maybe paint, plants, tools, and you probably spend more on home decor and furniture than if you were renting. And by the way, have you noticed that houses have been gradually getting bigger? It's not your imagination. In 1970, the average home was around 1,500 square feet. And by 1980, it was around 1,600 to 1,700 square feet. And by 2015, this has grown to almost 2,500 square feet. These days, new construction comes in around 2,100 square feet. But this is still a lot bigger than homes that were being built in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. And the bigger the house, the more you have to pay to heat and cool it, the more you pay in taxes, the more you pay in insurance, and the more you pay just in repairs. So this message that we need to buy a home or we're losers or not really adults is something that we need to break down a little bit more. Back then, it probably did make more sense simply because the homes were smaller. But with the average home much bigger these days, it's not always worth it, in my opinion. But just like a corporate job, I'm not saying it's the worst thing for everyone. Actually, it could be a good thing. There are nice things about taking out a mortgage and making that monthly mortgage payment. You can paint the walls and do things like that you can't necessarily do if you're renting. But again, it's a lie that was perpetuated because it benefits the overall economy. I just don't think it's for everyone. I think this viewpoint needs to be questioned on a case-by-case basis because, money aside, owning a home is very time-consuming. Very few people tell you this. I know I was never told this before I bought my homes. I had one and then I had another, and it just took up a lot of my time. So I mentioned this in a video I did recently about not wasting so much of your life once you're over 40. I'll put a link to that video in the description below. Of course, you can make a compromise and downsize. I'm glad there are a lot of people out there talking about moving into RVs or tiny homes. I think this is something worth considering as we get older, especially if you have children and they've moved out. Why keep paying on a 2,500 square foot home for two people and a cat? Don't buy into this American lie that you need to buy a quote normal home just because that's what you were told when you were growing up. I mean, when I was growing up, I heard of an old lady living in a shoe. Creative, right? The final lie I want to cover is that you probably grew up believing that you always had to pay this normal rate of taxes. If you had two parents who worked normal jobs, then this was just the way it was and still is, maybe in your mind. But you can do what the billionaires do and start a business. And this can be a micro business on the side while you keep your day job. I'm going to be doing a whole video on this, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss it. But I need to share a disclaimer. If you decide to take this route or route, be sure to consult a tax professional. But with all the tax fraud that's being uncovered and that has probably been going on for decades, it's in your best interest to find a way to legally reduce your tax burden. But this was yet another lie we were told, that we have to pay these taxes to the full rate and it's our civic duty to do this. And by the way, when you retire, you'll get some of that back through Social Security. Well, we all know that Social Security is tanking, and I think one of these days it won't even exist. So what lies did I miss here? I tried to cover the big ones because I've learned that if a corporation's lips are moving, they're probably lying. But let me know in the comments below if there's something I missed. Well, if you've stayed this long and you've made it this far, you're totally rad in my eyes, and I really appreciate it. I hope you'll come back. In the meantime, take care.